Thanks for tuning into the channel today. I'd like to give you 3 top tips for a better performing Classic 500. If you do like what I've put together, please give it a thumbs up and come back and I'll have more tips coming up shortly. Let's start with tip number 1. Tip number 1 for me would be to remove the spark plug and just check if it's a NGK or a Bosch. Now, Classic 500s always come with a Bosch spark plug, and I found over the years, probably 8 years of riding around on Classic 500s, that Bosch plug was really bad from the start on any new bike and was a bad performer. And what I mean by bad performer, it was really a bad plug to kick the bike over from scratch. It had a bad idle, it had a lot of problems with plug fouling, and it was just poor performance. So about 8 years back I got onto the idea from other people that at that stage we needed a better plug on the bike, and the person to check that out come up with the idea. It was the NGK BPR 6ES. So it doesn't matter if it's an NGK BP 6ES or the other, and you'll find if you put one of those straight into the bike, your bike will idle better, it'll perform better, and it'll be the best $5 you've spent on the bike to date, I would say, because it really performs with the NGK plug. And more importantly, you don't have to go and buy iridium or anything like that. I tried iridium in the early days, it didn't make that much difference. They last a lot longer, but they cost a lot more. So if you just go to a auto parts outlet, or even a Honda outlet which sells lawnmowers, the BPR 6ES is the same plug. It fits in the ordinary old Honda lawnmower. So that's the best tip number 1. Get rid of the plug if it's a Bosch. Put in an NGK. You'll notice the immediate difference, and you'll say, I wish I would have been riding with this years ago, or however long you've had the bike. Now while we're at it, there's a couple of things I might add. The NGK plug comes in 2 sorts. It comes with a solid core and a threaded one. So make sure when you buy your plug, if you happen to go and buy one, make sure that check it first that the cap screws off, just like shown here in the clip, or otherwise you'll be out of luck fitting it because it just won't fit back onto the lead. So as far as that one goes, make sure it's threaded. And number 2 is, if you've got a Euro 4 bike, which is 2017 onwards, you might not even have to go to a NGK plug, because I was mainly referring to the Euro 3s, because by the time they got the Euro 4s, I think Enfield by that stage upgraded the ECU, and in doing so, the bikes performed a lot better and had less issues compared to the earlier models from, say, 2009 up to 2017. So if you keep that in mind, if you've got a Euro 4, I never actually put an NGK, I don't think, in any of the Euro 4s. If I did, it didn't make much difference, because by that time they were well under control and working well. Yeah guys, so my second great tip would be Loctite the whole bike. So what I mean by Loctite, use Loctite thread locker, and it'll be the medium strength, and it'll be the blue colour. Don't ever use the red on it, because it'll cause you problems later on if you want to undo any of the bolts. So as far as that goes, we're talking a complete bike. So I'm talking from one end to the other, and the best idea, if you get there and Loctite it all and let it cure, when you go out there on a run, you won't be coming back each time and this bolt shook loose or this engine one came undone or one at the front. So if you do it that way, you'll be well under control, and it'll save you a lot of problems there as far as just getting out there tightening things up. So on the front end there, on both sides, there's roughly about 6 bolts or 7 bolts or whatever it is, and you'll bolt, or should I say you'll Loctite every one of those on the front end. Then you work your way up to the handlebars, onto those 2 big ones just below your instrumentation, Loctite them, put them back in, and also the ones underneath, because believe it or not, the ones underneath the bars have got the habit of coming loose, and you don't realise that, and you pick up extra bar shake from that. So the idea, Loctite those in position 2, then swing over to your front engine frame mount. You've got a couple of bolts there, and while you're at it, don't forget the petrol tank, because if you got the early model ones, you got the bolts up in the front of your tank and also at the back to hold it there. But one tip there, it's always good to use some sort of a washer behind the bolt when you're attaching that tank or tightening it up, because you can tighten those tanks and crack them, and in that case you might have a petrol leak. So after you've done that side, you can swing to the back of the bike, and don't forget your mudguard stays and also your shocks and that. I used to bolt everything up there with the Loctite 243, and over a period of time I found it worked really well compared to coming back. Now there are two areas I don't touch, and number one is the exhaust. I never worry about the heat-shield ones, because you never know how it reacts. There's a lot of temperature, it sort of hangs around that area there. So I just keep an eye on those ones and just go over them every now and again. And the other one is the header bolts. You've got 2 bolts that go there into the header pipe, and you just tighten them up. I never worried about Loctite in those either, because in the early days I did Loctite them once, then went to get out there one day to try to get the nuts off it, and it screwed the header stud straight out. Okay, tip number 3 is a double head steady from Hitchcock's Motorcycles in the UK. So if you go to the website and look under their Classic 500s, you'll see the units. They're stainless steel, so compared to the stock one, if you know anything about the Classic 500s, the original head steady was prone to crack on either side of the eyelets. So then they did an upgrade on it and put a heavier one on it, but between 2 bikes, it had them, or a few bikes that had them, I didn't notice much difference. And then going back about 5 years ago, and I think I was the first person ever to try this, because no one else had tried it up until I got around to it, as far as I'm aware of, through desperation. But about 5 years back, I had a really bad vibrating bike in the foot pegs, and it was a shocker in that area. And I was sort of looking at all sorts of fixes to see if I could do it. Now, out of sheer frustration, I was one day looking on Hitchcock's site, and I saw these stainless steel head steadies, what they sell over there. And I thought to myself, I don't know how you ripped the tank off the bike and just had a look in there how much room I had. And I thought, bugger it. I'm not going to buy one off Hitchcock's. By the time I pay freight and all that, I'll get 2. So what I did was I ordered 2 and brought them in. And you'll see a bit of a clip here where you'll see it fitting it on a later bike where I did it at 2 after it worked fairly well. And the bike I put it on was a really bad, like I said, foot peg vibrator. Like you could really feel the tremors running through the foot pegs. And believe it or not, when I did the double head steady on it, it almost eliminated that foot peg vibration in that. It was just unreal how it went from a terror down to a really tame and almost wiped it out. Just unreal. But what I would recommend, that if you're going to skimp and just think to yourself, well, I'll put one on it and try to save a few dollars, well, I'm sort of letting you know now that the correct way to do it would have put 2 on it and go all out to try to get rid of your foot peg vibration rather than play around with it. And that's what I did on this bike and was very happy. Never ever tried it with just 1 on it, because I'd probably class it as a half-done job. But if you keep in mind, if you've got a bit of foot peg vibration, put one of these on. I've done it to a few Enfields since those 5 years back, and it worked well on every one of those bikes on foot peg vibration. Didn't seem to help bar vibration, that's a totally different area. But foot peg, if you've got a problem there, get a couple of these, put them on it. I don't think you'll go wrong. Okay guys, that concludes me 3 top tips for Enfield. If you enjoyed the presentation on this and you found it helpful, please give it a thumbs up. And if the response is sort of good to the clip, I'll put a few other ones together on the Classic 500 and it may help you out long term. And once again, thanks for tuning in. Take a look and I'll catch up with you later.